This week's channeled message from the angels is about the fact that humanity, is one organism. So, welcome back to my channel, you guys. My name is Ann Tucker. If you haven't been here before, I am a trance channel. I channel from the angelic realm. I do that by going into a deep meditative state. I raise my awareness up as high as I can go, and I go a little higher. I connect, and those messages come through, messages and healing, and I transcribe them and share them here with you on YouTube. So, this week's message, in this message, the angels are trying to help us to understand the state of awareness that we have been in up until this point, where we have been going through a process of trying to better understand ourselves through the process of separation and contrast, but then trying to see how those are structures of consciousness that we now need to set down to move into a state of unity and we all have heard of the collective consciousness, that idea of being one being, that and a state of trust and openness with each other that lets go of that state of separation and gets us comfortable with this idea of being completely open to one another. So it's a huge shift when they're talking about, and it's a really helpful message, I think, to help us start to wrap our heads around it. So I hope you enjoy the message. I also want to add that for those of you who are interested, Peace Bathing, which is my monthly online healing program, is going to be this Sunday. So if you are not a member of that and are interested in joining, right now is a time when we are all meant to be doing as much as we can in terms of work on ourselves, on our own healing. So if you do not yet have a regular healing practice, or if you're looking to add to your regular healing practice, this is a great way to go. The angels will work with you. Even though it's a group session, you will be receiving an individuated healing from the angels. And it's this Sunday. You can find out more about it. I'll put the link below. It's also on my website, which is anntucker.com. It is Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific. All right. Hope you enjoy the message. All right. So if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and dig in. All right, so here is what they say. They say, we are a collective of humanity, of humanity's presence. Your awareness guides us now. Your conscious dawning of thoughtful remembrance brings us into focus. We are ourselves, and we are what you capitulate into. With the breathing you allow, the essence you draw down and in. We are ourselves, and we are what you now call other. Separateness is a state of opinion, as you would see it, a state of habituated withdrawal from other and from yourselves. It is a state in which you employ your comprehension to diverge more fully, to encapsulate your own essence as one body in the heavens, one being on the planet. Separating defines the complexity that you are. Contrast is what you seek. You enable the self to glide more easily toward that fuller renown of self-expression, to allow the self to resonate, full and complete, by announcing your differences. By claiming individuation, it is a tool of happening, of allowing the self to diverge and experience all that is from one vantage point. You have been here yourselves, defined in this manner, calling ourselves others, separates, not yourselves. But we are, again, reforming yourselves and what you are habituated to be. You are realigning your awareness toward a frontier you are unfamiliar with, toward a sense of what you are as being a divergence and yet the continuity within the whole. It is the self embedded within the axiom of humanity. The self, the fragrance of your capacity, echoed, remembered, called upon, and known for what you have been in understanding the self, and allowing the permanence of this gesture of living to imbue all things, to share of the self completely, to remove all boundaries, to access the self as one thought within a choir, sung loudly, triumphantly. For humanity must evolve as beings into that which we foresee, the evolution of self-knowing, the processing of experience, the comprehension of the self against others. This is the crux of your dilemma. To define the self, humanity has evolved to share a common reflection of conscious being, and to illuminate themselves for patterns of understanding through contrast with their neighbor. Separateness has been essential. To be aligned in this vertical state, a triumphant bar in the stream of notes that is your species. To be allowed and heard in density. To be expressed, fully saturated. And now the joining, the union. The effervescence you acquire through this cohesion and connection will ignite human comprehension to a level of understanding that empowers further light, that lifts you to a presence of enjoyment you cannot yet fathom. It is the transfer of the self into this state beyond comparing for the sake of knowing, and into this state of shared evolution and trust of each other. To elucidate the whole, not just the self. To understand everyone as intimately as you comprehend your own beings and doings. To be of this now, it is a change of magnificence in its impact to your growth and development as a species. You are but one organism, depopulated into many streams of consciousness, and will evolve into humanity as expressed in one collision, unification, expression. One shared mind to transfer, to know, to imbue each your perspective, and to share amongst yourselves equally the written pledge of belonging to oneself, one whole, one measure. Existence is of itself an experience to treasure, to share the knowledge of selves within this whole construct of human formation elevates yourselves to a disposition of a formation much higher than you have ever become. This next stage of evolution requires the laying down of forms and patterns to which you have become accustomed, ways of being that feel necessary but aren't. Rules of existence you have found as truth now come into examination and are discarded. To allow, to trust, to feel your presence and the presence of others. It all happens within the field you share with one another. It is happening. The trust within which you are bound together must evolve to become this. You are inspired. All right. Right? It's a really different concept. I tell you, it's something that, we have to get used to this idea because it is so different. And I think there's also, not only is it really, really different to think about us as one being, there's also, the egoic mind does not like that idea. The egoic mind, think about Star Trek and the Borg. The Borg was not a good thing, right? In Star Trek, the Borg was bad. I think it was bad. I'm pretty sure it was bad. There's that one, super hottie Borg woman. That's all I think about the Borg. Of course, it's sci-fi. They're going to make the Borg super hot. So, anyways, But I do feel like humanity does not like this idea of giving up our separateness. And think about how we react as we are starting to dabble in the loss of separation with the internet, and about how people feel about privacy. So it really raises a lot of stuff for us, this idea of losing our separateness. I think it brings up a whole bunch of resistance. So I think that's when they're talking about stuff we have to lay things down in terms of our old ways of thinking. This is going to take some work to get here. I don't think it's going to be an overnight thing. I think we're going to have to really work on this. You said, this is how you feel. That's great. And you're, yes, and said, hi, Anna, happy Friday. Happy Friday, you guys. Thank you so much for joining. So let's go ahead and break it down paragraph by paragraph and talk about it. And because there's a lot in here, there's a lot of richness to this message. And I think I think if we have the concept in our heads, then we can start to know, because it's not an all or nothing thing, right? There's going to be places where we are good with this, where we're doing it. And then there's going to be places where we're just not so good with it. So I think I think that there can be a large part of healing that is done just through increasing our awareness. So let's break it down. All right, first paragraph. We are a collective of humanity. So this is the angel speaking. We are a collective of humanity, of humanity's presence. Your awareness guides us now. Your conscious dawning of thoughtful remembrance brings us into focus. We are ourselves, and we are what you capitulate into. the breathing you allow, the essence you draw down and in. We are ourselves, and we are what you now call other. So they're starting to get into this idea of identity, and reflecting it back upon themselves, saying, who are we? We are, to us, who are the angels? Well, they are other. There's something else than what we are. But they're also saying, at the same time, they're saying that they are a collective of humanity. So in a sense, the angels are part of us. And we know that, like, our guardian angel is a part of us. Our guardian angel comes in with us at birth, and they're literally part of our field. Like, they're not, we think of them as the other, but they're not all that other. Like, they're kind of mixed in there with us. And the angels are tied to or especially the angels of earth are tied to our experience. Like, they're here, they're very engrossed in what we're doing. Their mission is tied to our mission, right? To how we're living. They're here, they're present. So they are one with us in some really, really meaningful ways. So they're saying that they are a collective of humanity, but of humanity's presence. So our presence here on the planet, our conscious state of awareness. They say our awareness guides us now. So we are the ones here down here. We're kind of calling the shots. So our awareness is what they do is in response to what our awareness does. So our awareness is guiding them. So yeah, they're separate, except not really, right? Because our awareness is guiding their actions. And then, so in other words, we make a choice, and then the angels respond to that choice. So our awareness is guiding them. They say, your conscious dawning of thoughtful remembrance, this is as we are awakening, brings us into focus. So we become more aware of them as we become more conscious. They say, and then they say, we are ourselves. So even though they are part of a collective of humanity, they say they are also themselves. And they say, and we are what you capitulate into. So as we are growing, we are moving towards them. And then they say, the breathing you allow, the essence you draw down and in. So they are light that we are infusing ourselves with, right? And then they say, we are ourselves, and we are what you now call other. So they're playing with this idea. In this opening paragraph, they're playing with all these different permutations of identity and showing us that identity is actually a really loosey-goosey thing. That we think of identity, we think of ourselves as the solidity of this, as solid as our bodies feel. That's how solid we think of ourselves and our identity to be. But in this first paragraph, opening paragraph, they're starting to play with that, starting to show, you know what, it's not really as solid as we think it is. Here's a lot of different ways. They're just kind of playing with it, right? And Teresa, good morning, Teresa, is saying, if we were each created as unique thoughts of Source God and become a separate being like a cell of God's Source, then we are getting back to the knowledge that we are all part of Source. Yes, totally, Teresa. Beautifully said. Yeah. All right. And Mike is asking, are we not the fallen angels? You know, it's such an interesting question, Mike, because I believe that we are all angels in a way, but I believe there are different kinds of angels. That I believe humans are a kind of angel, that we evolve into that as we raise our vibration. But there are angels that, like the angels that I'm channeling, the angels that we think of as angels are the light of God. They define themselves as the light of God. They don't have the creative spark, the essence of God that we carry. So we're a little different. We are a spark of the Creator. And that makes us, so yeah, angelic, but not the same as the angels that are the light of God. So it's different. It's different in a way. We kind of play different roles. So we are here to experience what God is when individuated into ourselves, right? Which is not what the angels do. So the angels as we think of them. So it's a complicated question. Are we the angels? We are, I think we are, as we evolve, we become angelic, right? So, but not the same, that there are different variations on the theme of angels. Yeah, that's my best way I can, based on what they've told us, that's the best way I can define that. So I hope that helps. All right. Okay, so next paragraph. They get a little bit more concrete here. Separateness is a state of opinion, as you would see it. So they're really getting to this idea. Separation, separateness, identity is a perspective. That's all it is. They say a state of habituated withdrawal from other and from yourselves. It is a state in which you employ your comprehension to diverge more fully, to encapsulate your own essence as one body in the heavens, one being on the planet. Separating defines the complexity that you are. So they're saying that it is a state of opinion. This is a perspective. To be separate is a perspective. And it's a state that we're habituated to, that this is how we have been as long as we can remember. For all of recorded humanity, we are in this state of separation. And it is a state of withdrawal from everyone else. We're withdrawing into ourselves and from yourselves, from our higher self. So this is the veil. So we literally turn our awareness, which is this light that we illuminate everything around us. Our awareness is that creative power that we contain, the spark of God that we contain, of source. We turn it around and we face it at ourselves. And that is separation. Rather than facing it outward to illuminate and to see and to experience what's out there, we turn it back in ourselves, and then everything that's out there becomes a reflection of what's in here. And that's the state of separation that we've been in, where we've been evaluating and trying to understand what is different about our unique spark. There's been a reason for it, right? To understand, how do you understand something better? You take it apart into its many components, and you look at each individual part, and you play with that part in a bunch of different contexts and see what it does. And then eventually you put it all back together again, right? It's like taking apart the radio to see how the little functions work and then reassembling it. Yeah. So that's what we're doing as a species. And we've been in the process of this exploring our separateness, and now we're trying to move back to reassembling into one thing, into one being. So it is a state in which you employ your comprehension to diverge more fully. So we've been using our comprehension, our conscious state, to become more separate on purpose, right? To encapsulate your own essence as one body in the heavens, one being on the planet. Separating defines the complexity that you are. So it's a process of trying to define what our essence is. So that's been our job in this whole process that we can think of as human history up until now. So the next paragraph, they go on, they say, contrast is what you seek to enable the self to glide more easily toward that fuller renown of self-expression, to allow the self to resonate full and complete by announcing your differences, by claiming individuation. It is a tool of happening, of allowing the self to diverge and experience all that is from one vantage point. To have been here yourselves, defined in this manner, calling ourselves others, separates, not yourselves. So I think this is interesting. They say that okay, the goal has been to, number one, to define it. Number two, to express it, to express what we are as an individuated part of the whole. And then they say that individuation, they call it a tool. And the kind of tool it is, they say, is a tool of happening. So it's a tool of experience, of happening, and they go on, they say a tool of happening, to experience all that is from one vantage point. So that's the kind of tool this has been. Separateness has been a tool of happening, a tool of experience, to put us into a context and to see what we would do. And that's what we've been up to, right? Super interesting. And I think really clear way of understanding it. All right. So then next paragraph, they say, but we are again reforming yourselves and what you are habituated to be. You are realigning your awareness toward a frontier you are unfamiliar with, toward a sense of what you are as being a divergence and yet the continuity within the whole. It is the self embedded within the axiom of humanity. So there's a little bit more here, but let's break that down so far. So I like interesting. They said, but we are again reforming yourself. So this evolution thing has not been, it's been a continuation, right? And we are ready for the next step. We're ready for the next step in the opening, but I think this is a big one. Like this is a big one, and the biggest thing about it, I think, is that it is conscious, that we are doing it consciously. That is a choice by humanity to make this step. And the more that we can be aware of it, the more we're learning from it, and the better it is. So, and it's a frontier we're unfamiliar with, toward a sense of what you are as being a divergence. So we're in this new way of being, we will still understand ourselves as an individual, as an individuated spark of the divine, but also in the continuity of the whole. So we start to see ourselves as separate, but also within the context of everyone. And it is the self embedded within the axiom of humanity. And the axiom is the angel word of the day, axiom. And it means, and it's of course a phenomenal choice, because to be embedded within the axiom of humanity. Axiom means an accepted proposition. Let's see, I wrote notes here. Self-evidently true. So in other words, it is an idea that is thought of as being a truth, that it's generally accepted knowledge. An axiom is something that we all assume is true. It's not really science. It's not like it's science like gravity where you test it. An axiom is something that we all agree on as being true because it's like, so everybody can see that the sky is blue. So that's the sky is blue, right? Because we can all see it. It's self-evident. It's accepted, even if we don't know the science behind it. So that's an axiom. And so the idea that humanity is a thing, that is an axiom because we think of it, it's a concept we know of, but it can be redefined in a bunch of different ways, and the ways we've been thinking about it might not be true. So it has been an axiom, an accepted truth up until now, but they're saying all these truths that we have thought of as being defined are up for redefinition. The other thing that is cool about axiom is it has a second definition, which is mathematical, which says that it is a proposition on which an abstractly defined structure is based. So an abstractly defined structure is based on. So we have this understanding of humanity. Humanity is an abstractly defined structure. It's kind of, the choice of words to me is bringing up this idea that the whole concept of humanity is just it's not a truth. It is something that we have ascribed truth to. We have made it a truth because we all accept it as a thing. But the thing that it is up for renegotiation. So super interesting choice of words, and really just in one word brings to a head the exact thing they're trying to get us to understand, which I think is super cool. All right. So we are a divergence, and yet the continuity within the whole. It is the self embedded within the axiom of humanity. The self, the fragrance of your capacity, echoed, remembered, called upon, and known for what you have been in the understanding of the self. So this is big, right? And allowing the permanence of this gesture of living to imbue all things. So this gets to what we have been going through, this process of self-understanding, of trying to have a better and better understanding of how we express embodied, what our divine spark is. Then the goal of that, we want to hold on to that knowledge. And that's why we're trying to go through all this healing right now, trying to really excavate our layers and see what's down there and figure ourselves out, and to hold that knowledge so that when we move into the collective, we share that knowledge with everyone. So we're not just doing this for ourselves, we're doing this for all of humanity. So it is that idea that the fragrance of your capacity. So the fragrance is the smell of your whole rich experience of living. It is everything that you are. It's a song of your soul, right? Which is then echoed, remembered, and called upon, right? And known for what you have been in understanding the self. So it's really trying to make that knowledge available to everyone, so that everyone would immediately have a deep and intuitive understanding of what it is to be you in all the ways that you have ever been, to have all that knowledge that you contain, to make that available to all of humanity. Which, let me know, does this make you feel exposed? Does this make you feel vulnerable? This idea of being exposed to such a degree, of sharing that every little tidbit of what it is to be your soul self. It brings up a little reaction, I think. So meditate on that. Like, it's an interesting thought to get used to this idea. And they go on to say, and allowing the permanence of this gesture of living to imbue all things, so that everybody becomes you, and that you become everybody. That you still get to be yourself, but you're also everybody, and everybody is also you, because they have access to that full understanding of what you are. So yeah, triggering and also amazing. Right? And Mike says, smells good to me. Good to smell you, Mike. All right. So I think it's a really interesting thought, but tell me if that triggers you. Tell me what you think about that, because I do think it's a hard thing to wrap our heads around. All right. To share of the self completely, to remove all boundaries, to access the self as one thought within a choir, sung loudly, triumphantly. So this is what we're trying to get to. We have been individual notes, and we are now trying to write the symphony, right? All right, next paragraph. For humanity must evolve as beings into that which we foresee. And so they're saying, basically, they say we are heading in a path that they use the word must here. They don't use must a lot. Humanity must evolve as beings into that which we foresee. So they know where we're headed. Like in their mind, and they've said this before, that it's already done, that we've already arrived. They have seen the next step and we are already there. So we are evolving to this, so what they foresee. The evolution of self-knowing, the processing of experience, the comprehension of self against others. This is the crux of your dilemma. So this is the spot that we are stuck on right now in terms of us getting to that next state of awareness, is the way that we process our experience, the way that we understand ourselves in the context of living. So we process our experience by comprehending ourself in contrast with other things. We say, I am this, not that, right? And we understand everything through the process of comparison. And that is the crux of our dilemma, that we understand. We work through living, we work through life through the process of comparison. And this has worked for us for thousands of years. It's a lovely mental cheat we make that allows us to understand things without having to know everything about them. We just understand this is not that. We know a cat is not a dog. We know that we comprehend and we measure our own progress by seeing ourselves in comparison to what we were, or by comparison with one another. So comparison has been the whole way that our brain is set up, is to compare. So this is a big thing to say we're going to not do that as much anymore. I don't know if we're going to lose it completely, but they're saying, yeah, that it's the dilemma. It's the crux of our dilemma, this contract, this way of how we function, of how humans define things, is through comparison. They say that to define the self, humanity has evolved to share a common reflection of conscious being. So we have a shared reality, is what they're saying. To define ourselves, we created a shared reality to move through this happening that they describe, this way of experience, this tool. This shared reality is a tool we created to help us better understand ourselves. So we have that's a mind bender right there. The humanity, that is the whole of us, that is all of us, decided at some point, or maybe it just evolved somehow, that we were going to have this tool of a shared reality to explore ourselves as individuals within this shared context. Trippy and very cool. All right. So a common reflection of conscious being, this is shared reality, and to illuminate themselves for patterns of understanding through contrast with their neighbor. So we then understand ourselves by identifying patterns in our behavior and in our reality that we define through contrast, through comparison. So we create these patterns to say this person wakes up early, this person wakes up late. This is we start to understand ourselves in this way. All right, separateness has been essential. So this has been the whole way we decided to go about this process of trying to express ourselves as individual sparks of the divine. We decided that separateness was going to be the process of doing it, right? And there could have been a bunch of different ways to do it, but that's what we chose. At least maybe there was other ways. It's the only way I can think of, but there probably were other ways. To be aligned in this vertical state. So in other words, we're aligned with our own connection to our own higher self, but we're not connected to each other. So it's not a horizontal connection, it's a vertical connection. To be aligned in this vertical state, a triumphant bar in the stream of notes that is your species. So we are one. A bar is like a selection. They gave us a whole selection of notes. Isn't that nice of them? They said we get to be like 4 notes. That's because we're so complex and deep. So we get to be in a stream of notes that is our species. To be allowed and heard in density, right? To be in the density of this third dimension that we're living in. To be expressed, fully saturated. So that was the idea of the density, allowed us to become, the more that we know about ourselves, the more we understand ourselves, the more we open to ourselves, the more deeply saturated we become. The more we are fully expressing the note of the divine that we carry. So this is the idea of fully expressed, fully saturated is what we wanted to do. That was the goal, to get as fully saturated as we could be. And now the joining, the union. So get fully saturated and then take that knowledge, that information, that insight, and bring it back to the whole. That's the goal. All right, next paragraph. And you're saying, what do you see on the faces that you meet as you walk down the street? I see you, I see us just as we are, all afraid and alone, yet all known to the self. I wrote this 30 years ago. Very insightful. Yes, exactly. And that is the idea that everybody out there is us, right? That we are all one being, but we are all separate. We're all having a separate experience. and we all can learn from each other's experience in a much, like right now we learn from each other's experience by, we read books and we talk to one another and we share through that. But this is about sharing at a much deeper level, where you literally get to feel what it is to be someone else and to have that experience at your fingertips, right? All right, the effervescence you acquire through this cohesion and connection will ignite human comprehension to a level of understanding that empowers further light, that lifts you to a presence of enjoyment you cannot yet fathom. So I love that is where this is going to be awesome, is what they're saying. This is a presence of enjoyment we cannot yet fathom. And that makes a ton of sense to me, because what is the plague of humanity right now? It is loneliness, right? Being separated from one another is a painful experience. And everybody on this earth feels lonely. And that's the pain of the veil and of coming here and being separated from source and from love. And so if that is the main beef that we have with living, is loneliness, this is getting rid of that. This is bringing us back into a state of belonging and connection. So it is a state of enjoyment that we cannot yet fathom. We can't even imagine, having been in this state of separateness and loneliness, we can't even wrap our heads around what it would be like to not feel that, and to be in a state of feeling completely seen, understood, loved, connected, right? That is something that we can't even yet put our heads around. So, but they're telling us it's going to be really good, right? We hear about that, people who have near-death experiences and they feel that overwhelming sense of love, right? Then they come back, they say there's no words to express it. All right. It is the transfer of the self into this state beyond comparing for the sake of knowing. So that's where we've been. We've been in the state of comparing for the sake of knowing, into the state of shared evolution and trust of each other. So this is huge. And this is one of the main things they keep coming back to, is that we need to move and evolve into a state of trust, that we have to trust one another. And it brings me back to that peace bathing that we had, it was a couple of weeks ago. We did a peace bathing where, and I mentioned it before, where they literally unzipped us like bananas and took away our peel, everything, all of the ways in which we hide ourselves, in which we, protect ourselves. They peeled it all away and just exposed us, and then moved us together. And so that we all were feeling each other totally exposed. It was that idea of, can you trust each other enough to totally let go of all your protections and move into the center and share what's underneath? And it's a very, very different experience. And that's what they're saying. We're trying to get to that state of trust, because that's what we have to do if we're going to become one again. To elucidate the whole, not just the self. To elucidate means to make something clear. So we want to understand the whole of humanity, not just ourselves. To understand everyone as intimately as you comprehend your own beings and doings. To be of this now, it is a change of magnificence in its impact to your growth and development as a species. So this is like next level growth. This is like a massive leap forward for humanity. All right, next paragraph. You are but one organism, depopulated into many streams of consciousness. I love that line. You are but one organism, depopulated into many streams of consciousness, and will evolve into humanity expressed in one collision, unification, expression, right? So, and they are not sloppy in their choice of words. So they chose collision, unification, expression. So I think that's alluding to the fact that this is not necessarily going to be a gentle process, that as we move toward this unification, this collision, and we know this as we're going through our own healing, most of the time when we heal, it's through pain. It's because we bump up against ourselves. We bump against our limitations. We bump up against the things that trigger us, right? It is a collision, right? And through that process, through the pain that we experience, we are then forced to go within and to see what it is that is part of us. And then we are forced to grow through that in order to move forward, in order to get past it. So collision, right? And then unification. So as we are trying to move into this new state, it doesn't surprise me that there will be a collision that forces us into the state of unification. That's how we grow. Humans grow through I'm sorry, we grow through pain. We do. We grow because we have to. But if we are not forced to do it, we are very, very content. We are happy to sit around and, make a pot roast or whatever it is. And so there has to be something that forces us to move forward into that unification and expression of the collective. One shared mind to transfer, to know, to imbue each your perspective, right? So that is that idea that we will share our perspective with everyone. We will really see things as everybody else sees them. We'll understand things from other people from as if we were seeing it through their eyes. And they go on to say, and to share amongst yourselves equally in the written pledge of belonging to oneself. And this is interesting, the written pledge of belonging to oneself. So that makes me wonder, right? That makes me think, like, what do they mean by that? The written pledge. I mean, it's, yes, you can take it as like a metaphor that we have all promised to reunify at some point, right? That this is kind of the concept that we're going to come back together again. But they specifically say that we all share amongst ourselves the written pledge of belonging to oneself. So, yeah, it makes me think of the Akashic Records. I don't know. It's a really interesting idea that there's a written pledge. All right, one whole, one measure. All right, and then next paragraph, they say, existence is of itself an experience to treasure. To share the knowledge of selves within this whole construct of human formation elevates yourselves to a disposition or for a formation much higher than you have ever become. So they're saying to do this, to be really open to sharing who we are at our deepest level, of really letting go of our protections, moving into this state of trust of each other, so big and so hard to do that elevates us to a formation much higher than we've ever become. Right? This next stage of evolution requires the laying down of forms and patterns to which you have become accustomed. So this is the way they were talking about before, calling the concept of humanity an axiom, that it is not necessarily a scientific truth, that it is a thing we define and take for granted. That maybe humanity is, we are that we are the cells within the body of humanity. Right? That we have to lay down the forms and patterns to which we become accustomed, ways of being that feel necessary but aren't. Rules of existence you found as truth now come into examination and are discarded. So this really applies to what are the things that we have thought of as being necessary in order to maintain our separateness. So that gets to this, what we were talking about before, about privacy and about, identity and about like I think about one of the things I had to work through early in my journey was a fear of being seen. And I always joke about, like, my very first profile picture was I did not, when Facebook first came out, I did not want to get on Facebook. Like, I wanted to be there because everybody was on there, but I didn't want to have a profile picture. I didn't want to put myself out there. And so I found a profile picture that somebody had taken with the camera upside down, and I was wearing a party hat, like a pointy party hat. So you see it's upside down. You see the pointy hat like a cone, and my head is upside down, and it looks like I'm the scoop of ice cream in the cone. And the only way you could see my face at all is if, like, you turned your computer upside down and looked at it. So it was like a photo that wasn't a photo, a perfect photo for someone who doesn't want to be seen. And that fear of being seen, I think that the desire for privacy, I think it comes out in two ways. I think either we have a fear of being seen and we do things to hide or to step back, or we stay in the back of the classroom or whatever we do to, like, not be seen, or we decide we want to control how we're being seen, and we try to put ourselves out there in a way that we think is going to be socially acceptable. We try to define how other people are going to see us. So we either we withdraw or we try to control how we're seen. And in either way, it's inauthentic. Either way, it is not allowing ourselves to just be open and vulnerable and to trust, right? It all stems from the fact that we don't trust, that we think that we're going to be received in a way that's negative. We think that if we show ourselves, something's going to hurt us. That's not trust. And we're conditioned that way because of our experience. So we have to be compassionate with ourselves. We have to understand we came in and we did experience all that stuff. We were shut down. We were criticized. We were all those things. So we have to heal that so that we can get to a place where we can exist in a state of trust and know that even if somebody does respond to us negatively, it has nothing to do with us. It's just their journey. So we need to get to that place of being able to exist authentically and not feel like we have to put up protections. And that's the step we have to step into that, right? We just show up that way so that we can then invite others to show up that way too. Yeah. All right. So that's some of the big stuff we have to discard, big old ways we have to let go of, things we thought were true that aren't, right? That's big stuff. Next paragraph, to allow, to trust, to feel your presence and the presence of others, right? This is what we were talking about being that authentic who you are without fear, to trust, to allow, to trust, to feel your presence and the presence of others. So really like letting your field be permeable and filling other people's fields. Right? It all happens within the field you share with one another. It is happening. The trust within which you are bound together must evolve to become this. You are inspired. So, and I know that there's stuff still on the planet that is not that is ill-intentioned. So I know that there's a certain amount of protection and clearing and stuff we do to keep ourselves clear. I'm aware of that, but I think that's why this is a process. It's a process of getting yourself to a state where you can be open. And if you encounter something like that, it's not a big deal and you clear it. You just clear it, clear it and move on. But you try to stay in that state of trust, because trust is a beautiful, very high vibration. So the more we're able to embody that sense of belief in ourselves and in humanity, I think the more open we become, I think the higher vibe we become, the harder it is for us to be affected by negativity. Right? All right. So you guys, that was the message for today. I hope you loved it. And I want to reiterate, Peace Bathing. If you want to join us, Peace Bathing is a beautiful group meditation with the angels. It's going to be this Sunday. For those of you who are in it, don't forget, this Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific. If you do not yet have a healing practice, a regular healing practice to help guide you through this ascension, or if you want to add to your practice, consider joining us. It's a beautiful experience. The angels do work with each person. It's a group experience, but the angels work on you individually so you get the healing that you need. And you can find out more about it on my website, anntucker.com. All right, you guys have a beautiful weekend. Sending you lots of love. And I will see you next Friday live. Bye, you guys.